With new terror fears gripping the nation, the White House saying the president is ready to pick up his executive pen to close GITMO down.
Will the president be ready to do an executive order to close Guantanamo?
Laura, the president has indicated a willingness to use as much of his executive authority as he can to try to take the steps that he believes are consistent with the national security interests of the United States, and that's closing the prison at Guantanamo Bay.
Well, some here say that would be a costly mistake. Are they right? Hi, everybody. I'm David Azard. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Elizabeth McDonald, Rich Karlgaard, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, John Tamny, and joining us again is Austin Goolsbee. Sabrina, would it be a mistake?
It would absolutely be a mistake, not only to close it, but also to use an executive order to do so. I find this sort of, obsession over Guantanamo Bay sort of fascinating. I mean, the reality is this is a prison that we use to hold terrorists, to question them, and in some instances, perhaps to hold them before they would be brought to a trial. But I don't understand if we don't like who's being held there, or if there's a question about how they're being treated, that's a policy we can change. But why would we close down this facility? What are we going to do with all the prisoners? Build another expensive facility somewhere else? I just don't understand this.
Austin, particularly when a lot of those prisoners that are released do go back. About 30% of those who have been released either return or are suspected of returning to the battlefield.
I don't think I agree with that number, but look, the issue with Guantanamo Bay,
that's a pretty solid number that both sides of the aisle tend to agree with. But go ahead,
regardless,
Austin.
The issue with Guantanamo Bay is it's fundamentally a place with no law. And that's why it has become such an international symbol of lawlessness, is they chose Guantanamo Bay precisely because U.S. law would not apply there. And so I think that's a problem, and they gotta find some way around it. Now, I don't think that means you should take these really bad guys and put them in county jail or something. But, why not put it on an island in Alaska in the freezing cold or something like that? But let's get some rule of law.
Well, let's look at what happened, Rich. We don't have to speculate about what could happen with the Bergdahl swap, for example. We saw what happened. A lot of the worst were traded for this guy of questionable background anyway, and they're being held in Qatar, which has been very favorable to terrorists in the past. They're probably going to be released to the battlefield soon.
Yeah, President Obama's spokesman up front in this segment talked about the security interests of the United States. And on Thursday, the Senate voted 98-1 to take the Iran nuke deal out of the hands of President Obama and John Kerry, saying basically, we don't trust you entirely with the security interests of the United States. So, on GITMO, I don't know why we should trust President Obama on the security interests of the United States.
Emac, it's just that we have a president who seems fixated on these ideological goals which don't mesh with reality.
Yeah, that put national security in second behind that, right? So, it does, by the way, GITMO does adhere to international law. And GITMO, basically, terrorists have been chopping off heads well before GITMO, well before 9/11. So the fact that, the idea that it's a recruiting tool is really lame. I love what Jay Leno said about it. Turn it into a taxpayer-funded solar company, and then you'll see it shut down in a month.
Right. John, that has to settle in for a bit. John, let's look at the poll, because most Americans do believe that GITMO should remain, that it would be a mistake to release the prisoners and shut it down. Shouldn't we go with the American public on this?
Yeah, the Americans are right on this one. Now, I'm the first to say I'm very skeptical when we want to commit troops around the world. I think it actually makes us less safe relative to terrorists. But if we're going to be at war, let's be at war. And if GITMO makes us safer from terrorists, let's keep it open. And who cares what global opinion is? It's about U.S. safety.
Mike, again, it's a president that just seems, even if his campaign promises sounded good in 2008 and they haven't worked out, he's going to stick with them.
And one of the bad things he's sticking with, David, is his theme that Islam and these terrorists aren't part of a much larger threat to this country. He very infrequently even acknowledges the fact there's a threat from Islam. He doesn't call a terrorist act a terrorist act. And what I'm afraid of, this really is just part of that overall theme. He seems to live in a different universe from most people.
Austin, do you think he's going to pull an executive action on this one?
I mean, he he's allowed to choose on military policy. I think that they've passed in Congress various laws to try to complicate it. I don't think anybody's talking about releasing the prisoners, but the moral debasement of the American brand name in the world because of torture and us doing things that we prosecuted war criminals for doing in Japan in World War II. I do not think that you should underestimate that undermines the moral authority and the security of the country.
Austin, look, we got to put in some facts here. The fact is that before there was GITMO, we had 9/11. Before there was GITMO, we had the bombing of the Cole. Before there was GITMO, we had the '98 bombing of the World Trade Center.
Yes, that's correct, but how is that relevant?
These guys didn't need any sort of anti-American propaganda to fuel their cause. Their cause was lit long before GITMO existed.
How many were doing it, and did this lead to more? You've had major military officials in the United States, generals, saying they don't want the GITMO to be hung around their necks, that it is motivating our enemies.
You made your point, Sabrina. The fact is that the executive action may be used by this president whenever he is committed to some ideological goal, even if it's against the interests of the United States. He seems to go with it.
Right, because of course at this point the president is all but a lame duck, right? We're already all we're talking about right now is the 2016 election. This is his opportunity to appeal to the far left of his party, to work on his legacy, to appeal to people who were excited about him when he first came into office. So he leaves with that same enthusiasm. And let's remember, to Austin's point about an executive order, those are to be reserved for major policy crises, not for major policy overhauls. Not if we want to change our healthcare system or a major military decision. Therefore, for emergency situations, this is not one of them.
Emac, there's another possibility here, which is that GITMO, of course, is on the island of Cuba. This is a president who's been making a lot of overtures to the Castro brothers, who pretty much control that island. Would this be another gift to them?
You know, that would be so bad if that is the backstory here. Boy, the American people would not be for that. You know, by the way, it is immoral to have our troops fight the same enemy twice. And by the way, speaking of morality, is it more moral to release these guys and then hit them with the drone strike, right? These guys have also basically declared endless, infinite, eternal war on us. So that's why we need to keep it open.
Rich, I love that point of Emac. The fact is that we've already fought a battle with these guys. Now we might fight them again. We know that a lot of them are on the battlefield again.
I don't understand the logic of this at all, except that there's a peculiar logic, and Austin kind of hinted at it, that President Obama feels that we have tarnished the American brand. But among who? You know, among university professors, among leftists on the, in the press, among the people in the UN. I don't think around the world we've tarnished our brand at all. I think our brand has to do with strength.
Well, and again, John, to Austin's point, I mean, you look at what has happened over the past 6 years. Things have gotten worse. Our brand seems to have gotten worse as the president has been pulling back, trying to whittle down, his phrase, what's going on in GITMO.
Yeah, again, I don't like all the use of the military around the world. I think it's dangerous, but if we are going to use military force, I want to have a really bad brand. I want it to be that we really beat the hell out of our opponents so that they don't do more of this. If we're going to be at war, let's be at war.
All right, that's the last word from John Tamny. Meanwhile, the disaster after the disaster. Folks desperate for federal help after getting hit hard by bad storms, but they could soon be denied that help if they don't give in to President Obama's climate change agenda. Isn't this PC blackmail? That debate coming next.